Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to the second part of our full step-by-step interior design and modeling tutorial for this residential project. If you watched the previous video, you already know that we completed the base modeling and prepared the 2D plan for 3D development. But if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I definitely recommend watching it first so today's workflow makes more sense. In this episode, I'm going to refine our initial ideas, add more detail to the design, and gradually push the model towards something closer to the final stage. Interior design isn't something that happens in one pass. It takes constant adjustments, reviewing ideas, and improving the concept until it reaches a polished, well-balanced result. As I continue working, you'll see me jump between different parts of the project, sometimes going back to adjust the ceiling, sometimes modifying the walls, sometimes updating furniture or details. In the previous session, I kept things very simple, but now I'll begin adding the elements that give the design its character, things like door frames, arches, and small classical touches to reinforce the neoclassical direction of the project. Next, let's look at the guest wardrobe and entry area. The previous version felt a bit empty and disconnected from the rest of the interior. So I'm going to adjust the closet, refine its dimensions, and add a decorative niche or console so the space feels welcoming and visually balanced. Interior design is all about turning blank, unused corners into functional and attractive areas. Sometimes I'll need to go back and modify earlier decisions. This is part of the real design process. No matter how carefully you plan, once you start modeling, new ideas appear, and sometimes you realize that an earlier choice doesn't work well. Professionals constantly revise their work until all elements come together harmoniously. For example, in the corridor area, I originally designed a simple door, but I think it would look better if we add a frame or an arch, something that defines the transition between spaces. Because this project has both modern and classical qualities, I'll keep the arch very minimal, just enough to highlight the transition without overwhelming the design. Also, for some of these awkward wall recesses and columns, I think it's best to use decorative elements, maybe a console table with a vase, some artwork above it, or even a narrow shelving unit. These additions help break the monotony of long walls and create a sense of rhythm throughout the space. For example, around the dining area, I want to add a simple recessed ceiling that creates a soft, ambient glow. Just a minimal detail, but it really helps shape the identity of the space. Nothing too heavy or complicated, just enough to emphasize the classical influence without making the room feel old-fashioned. Now let's go back to the kitchen and open the counter area. I've been adjusting the opening between the living room and kitchen so the transition feels smooth and intentional. Originally, the fridge placement wasn't ideal. It made the space feel narrow on one side. So I redesigned that corner, added a partition, and refined the cabinet layout to give the kitchen a more open, breathable feel. At the same time, I made sure there's enough space for the refrigerator door to open comfortably. In real-world projects, small details like this matter a lot. If you ignore them, the space may look good in 3D but become impractical in real life. Once the fridge area was fixed, I went back to align the arcs and edges of the open counter. Because this section sets the visual tone between the living room and kitchen, it must be carefully proportioned. I want the arc to be soft, clean, and consistent with the rest of the interior's language. There was also a structural column affecting the left side of the open counter. To fix its awkward alignment, I extended the cabinetry and gave the corner a more intentional design so it doesn't look like a mistake during construction. On the right side of the open kitchen, I decided to close the corner and continue the cabinetry behind it. This creates a clean visual line and prevents the refrigerator from being exposed in the living room. Now the kitchen looks like a properly enclosed space but still maintains an open, airy feel thanks to the front opening. Next, I revisited the cabinets to adjust their height and proportions. One corner looked too tight, so I redesigned it for smoother circulation. I don't want the kitchen to feel cramped, especially since it's one of the most frequently used spaces in the home. Around this stage, I also added artwork locations on the walls. These aren't final, but they help visualize how the interior will feel once decorated. I also inserted a few simple frames to bring life to otherwise empty walls. Later, during the rendering phase, we'll replace them with high-quality artwork and textures. I added clean, modern molding around the windows to break the uniformity and give the walls more depth. These subtle elements make a huge difference in the final render. Next, I designed two large decorative frames for the walls. These weren't in the original plan, but adding them brings a sophisticated elegance to the interior. I tried thicker versions and thinner versions, reviewing how each affects the room's proportions. Eventually, I chose a more refined, thinner profile because it looks delicate, clean, and modern while still referencing classical style. As you know, details make a huge difference. Even small decisions like whether a frame is a few millimeters thicker or thinner can influence the overall harmony of the design. I want the inside structure to match the outer design so everything feels coherent and believable. Even though we may not see every interior detail in the final renders, modeling them correctly helps with accuracy and overall quality. Since this is a true 0 to 100 project, I'm designing the entire thing from scratch while explaining my thought process. That's why some parts may take longer. I'm not just modeling, I'm also interpreting the needs of the space and making decisions live as I go. Below the cabinets, I added a 15 cm recessed toe kick to improve realism. This small detail makes the cabinet doors easier to use and looks much more professional in visualization. Moving on, I began defining the internal layout of the cabinets, things like vertical dividers, door panels, shelves, and proportions. Then I went back and refined the TV area wall. I added small curves and trims to soften the transitions and prevent harsh edges. This not only adds depth but also makes lighting behave more naturally during rendering. If you're new to interior modeling, don't worry, this level of detail may seem time-consuming, but it's essential for high-quality results. Professionals spend hours refining these tiny parts because they ultimately make the difference between a basic render and a polished, realistic one. I continued refining the wall frames, adjusting their spacing, cleaning their lines, and making sure they align perfectly with the surrounding geometry. Perfection in the technical model leads to perfection in the final output. Then I began separating the flooring into different materials. I used a 20 or 30 cm border around the perimeter, something subtle, not too heavy, so it breaks the monotony and gives the floor a luxury feel. This is important because without variation, the floor can look flat and unrealistic. I also made sure the border connects seamlessly with the kitchen tiles, the corridor floor, and all the arcs and corners around the cabinetry. Consistency is the key. For the overall mood, you can imagine a combination of subtle wood, stone, and decorative trims. These materials increase the sense of depth and richness in the space. Please remember, good rendering starts with good modeling, so every little detail you add now will help your final visuals stand out. To make the design stronger, I used references and inspirational images from real project examples. I didn't copy anything directly, I just used the visual language to improve proportions and the richness of the details. If you're a designer, this is a very helpful habit. Gather real-world samples, study their details, and apply the ideas creatively to your own project. As we continue, I keep refining the smaller details, adjusting lines, trimming edges, cleaning surfaces, dividing panels, and making sure the model is fully consistent. This helps create a clear boundary around the kitchen while still allowing the space to feel open. Toward the end of the process, I finalized the ceiling heights and made adjustments so all elements, cabinets, arches, doors, and walls, align properly. I also cleaned the floor mesh, fixed small bumps caused by the slab, and ensured that no geometry would cause issues during rendering. Finally, I added a decorative frame near the dining area and refined the space near the entrance. I also started placing some artwork and decor elements to help visualize the final composition. At the end of the project, you'll see the final renders, complete with materials, lighting, and full detailing. I hope you enjoy the journey through this tutorial and learn something valuable from each step. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of part 2. I hope you enjoyed the process and learned useful techniques for your own projects. I appreciate your support. See you in the next video. Take care and goodbye.